My grandmother's house smelled like lavender and old wood, and I had lived there for 4 years taking care of her while my brother visited twice a year and called himself devoted. The day he changed the locks, he did it while I was at a doctor's appointment and left a single cardboard box on the front porch with a post-it note that said, "Find somewhere else to land." I stood at the bottom of those porch steps holding my keys that no longer worked and read that note 3 times. Not because I needed to read it again, because I was deciding something. My brother's truck was in the driveway. I could hear him laughing inside. His wife was playing music in the kitchen like the house had already been sanitized of me. The neighbors across the street had their blinds cracked. I picked up the box. I took a photo of the front door, the post-it note still stuck to it, and I left without knocking. That night, my brother texted a group chat that included every aunt, cousin, and family member with a pulse. He said he had finally sorted out the living situation at Grandma's house. He said some people take advantage of grief. He said he was looking forward to honoring her memory properly, now that things had been set right. 11 people liked the message. My aunt sent a heart emoji. One cousin wrote, "It was time." My mother, who had been dead for 6 years, was the only person in that family who would have seen through it immediately. I sat in my car in a Walgreens parking lot and read every single response, and then I set my phone face down on the passenger seat and stared at the windshield for a long time. Here is what my brother told people. I had moved into grandmother's house after my mother died because I had nowhere else to go. I worked from home doing something vague with computers. I had no real career, no husband, no structure. Grandmother had taken me in out of kindness. I had repaid her by staying indefinitely, running up her household expenses, and positioning myself to inherit more than my fair share. He told this story at Christmas. He told it at Easter. He told it to the pastor of her church. He told it so cleanly and so often that people who had never met me twice repeated it back to me with sympathy on their faces, as if I were a problem that had finally been resolved. The actual story was quieter and less flattering to everyone else. I moved in because my grandmother had a fall, and her doctor recommended she not live alone. My brother, who lived 40 minutes away in a 4-bedroom house with a finished basement, said he simply did not have the space. His wife confirmed this. I was living in a rented studio apartment at the time, working as a remote contracts analyst for a regional insurance firm. I packed my things and moved in on a Thursday. I told myself it would be temporary. That was the first lie I told myself in a long series of them. My grandmother was sharp and stubborn and funny in a dry way that most people missed. She also needed more help than anyone had admitted before I arrived. Her prescriptions had not been filled correctly in months because she could not always read the small print and would not ask for help. 2 of her utility accounts were behind because she had been writing checks to the wrong addresses after the companies changed their billing departments. Her property taxes had a lien notice sitting in a pile of mail she had not opened because the envelopes looked like advertisements. I found all of this in the first 2 weeks. I started fixing it quietly because she was embarrassed, and I did not want to embarrass her further. What I did not anticipate was how long quietly would last. I cleared the lien. I set up automatic payments. I drove her to every appointment and sat in waiting rooms reading documents on my laptop while she talked to her doctors. I managed her insurance claims, which were a disaster of miscoded procedures and unreturned calls. I refilled her prescriptions and organized them into a weekly system she could manage herself, which she appreciated more than almost anything. I paid for things when she ran short, which happened more than her pride would ever allow her to say out loud. I was good at making it not feel like charity. I paid the plumber directly when a pipe went in the basement. I covered the deductible when her car needed brake work. I bought the groceries and called it our groceries and never brought it up again. My brother came at Thanksgiving and Christmas and one random weekend in spring when he wanted to show his kids the backyard they had not seen in 8 months. He sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee while I cooked, and he talked about his business, a mid-size landscaping company that had been struggling since he overexpanded 2 years earlier. He did not ask about the house. He did not ask what I had fixed or what I had paid or whether I needed anything. He asked once, in a general way, how things were going, and when I said fine, he seemed relieved and changed the subject. His wife was more direct. She told my grandmother on a Christmas visit that she worried about me becoming too comfortable. She said it with a smile, the kind that wraps cruelty and concern so neatly, you almost have to admire the craftsmanship. My grandmother looked at her for a moment, and then looked at me, and then said she was going to rest before dinner. I finished the dishes alone. The last year of my grandmother's life, I did not sleep more than 5 hours most nights. Her health declined faster than the doctors had projected. I coordinated with 3 different specialists, a home health aide who came 3 mornings a week, the pharmacy, and her attorney when she needed to update her documents. I kept a notebook. Everything went in it. Every appointment, every medication change, every bill, every conversation with an insurance adjuster. I kept it because I am organized by nature, not because I was planning anything. That notebook would matter later. She died on a Tuesday in February, quietly, which was exactly how she would have wanted it. My brother arrived 4 hours after I called him. He cried loudly in the hallway. His wife made calls on her phone in the driveway. Within 48 hours, they were discussing the estate. My grandmother's will divided her assets equally between my brother and me. The house was included. My brother did not like this. He had expected, he said, that the house would come to him entirely since he was the eldest and the one who had maintained a real presence in the family. I asked him what real presence meant. He said I knew what he meant. I said I genuinely did not. His wife stepped in and said this was not the time, which was the first sensible thing she had said in 4 years. The weeks after the funeral were a study in how fast family grief turns into family logistics. My brother's attorney sent a letter suggesting I had been living rent-free in an estate asset and that my portion of the inheritance should be adjusted to account for this. I read the letter twice, and then put it in a folder I labeled carefully. My own attorney, a woman I had called based on a recommendation from a colleague, told me to gather documentation. I had been gathering it for 4 years without knowing why. The notebook. The receipts in a folder on my desktop, organized by month and category. Screenshots of bank transfers. Texts from my grandmother's doctor that had come through my phone because I was listed as her primary contact. Insurance correspondence addressed to me as her caregiver representative. Invoices from the plumber, the electrician, the brake shop. 4 years of evidence that I had not been a guest in that house. I had been its operating system. I sent my attorney a package that took her a full day to review. When she called me back, she was quiet for a moment before she said, "You have been very thorough." I said I was an analyst. She said that explained it. While the legal process moved at its own pace, my brother moved faster. He contacted the property management company he used for his rental units and had them rekey the locks. He texted me the morning it happened to say he thought it was best if I stayed elsewhere while the estate was being settled to avoid any appearance of impropriety. He used the word impropriety. About me. In the house I had kept standing for 4 years. I did not respond to the text. I took a photo of the porch and the post-it note, and I drove to the extended stay hotel. I had already quietly booked 2 weeks earlier because I had seen this coming, and I was done being surprised. The group chat message went out that evening. I read it in my hotel room with the curtains open and the parking lot lights coming in, and I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not hurt, not angry, clear. The same clarity I felt when I looked at that post-it note and decided to take a photo instead of knocking. What my brother did not understand was what he had just turned off. The property taxes were due in 6 weeks. I had been managing automatic payments from an account I set up during my grandmother's life with her authorization. When I quietly removed myself from that account, the automation stopped. I did not cancel anything. I simply stopped being the person who watched it. The homeowner's insurance renewal had been on a payment schedule I maintained. The insurer had my email on file as the point of contact because I had handled a claim 2 years prior. When the renewal notice came, it came to me. I forwarded it to my attorney as documentation and did not forward it to my brother. The estate attorney had questions about the property maintenance records. Specifically, they wanted an accounting of what work had been done, when, and who had paid. I provided my records, which were detailed and dated. My brother, when asked for his, produced 2 receipts. One was for a tree trim from 3 years ago. One was for a bag of mulch. By Thursday of the second week, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. It was my brother's wife. She asked how I was doing in a tone that meant she needed something. I said I was fine. She said things had gotten a little complicated with the house paperwork. I said I imagined they had. She said my brother was wondering if I still had access to the insurance documents. I told her to have their attorney contact my attorney. She asked why I was being difficult. I asked her to define difficult. She hung up. Friday morning my brother called from his personal number. He did not warm up into it. He said there was an issue with the insurance renewal and the property taxes and something with a vendor the estate attorney was asking about, and he needed my documentation. He said he needed it today. I listened to all of this, and then I said I would have my attorney forward anything relevant to his attorney. He said that would take too long. I said I understood. He said, Evelyn, I need your help. I said I knew he did. Then I let the silence sit there until he filled it. He called me selfish. He said I was punishing the family over a misunderstanding about the locks. He said the house was a shared asset and I was sabotaging it out of spite. I waited until he finished. Then I said, you texted 11 people that I had taken advantage of grief. I said, your wife told grandmother I was too comfortable. I said, you left a post-it note on the door of a house I kept running for 4 years and called it sorting things out. I said, this is not spite, this is what it looks like when I stop. He had no answer for that. So he switched to the only card he had left. He said grandmother would not want this. I had heard that card played before. My mother would not want this. Grandmother would not want this. The dead are always recruited by the people who paid the least attention to them while they were alive. I told him I had sat with our grandmother every day of the last year of her life. I said I knew exactly what she wanted and did not want. I said she wanted her house to go to someone who had actually cared for it. Then I said, your attorney has my attorney's number, and I ended the call. He showed up at my hotel. I do not know how he found it, though I assume he asked around. He knocked on the door at 7 in the evening on a Saturday with his wife behind him like a second opinion. I opened the door and looked at them both. He had his hands in his pockets and his jaw tight the way men get when they want to look controlled but are not. I said I was not going to discuss legal matters without counsel present. His wife said this was not about legal matters. I said everything was about legal matters at this point. He pushed the door a little with his hand, not hard, but enough. I said if he touched the door again, I would call the front desk. He stepped back. His wife looked at him and then at me, and then at the carpet. He tried one more approach. He said we were family. He said our grandmother would have wanted us to handle this like adults. He said I was making everything harder than it needed to be, and he was tired of being the one trying to hold things together. I looked at him for a moment. I thought about 4 years of pharmacy runs and insurance calls and tax liens and plumbing invoices. I thought about the notebook. I thought about the post-it note still saved in my phone's camera roll. I said, you just described the last 4 years of my life, except I was actually doing it. He left. His wife paused in the doorway on her way out and looked at me with an expression I could not entirely read. Not quite apology, not quite respect. Something in between that people wear when they have finally counted the numbers and do not like what they add up to. She did not say anything. She closed the door behind her. My attorney filed the full accounting the following Monday. 46 pages. Every expense I had covered, every task I had performed, every bill I had managed. A conservative estimate of what equivalent professional caregiving services would have cost over 4 years. The property maintenance record that demonstrated sustained upkeep of the estate asset in question, a timeline, a summary. At the end, a single photograph. The front door of my grandmother's house with a post-it note that said find somewhere else to land. My brother's attorney called my attorney the same afternoon. They spoke for 40 minutes. When my attorney called me, she said, they are ready to discuss settlement terms. I said I was not interested in settlement. I said I wanted what the will said I was owed. She said that was exactly what we were going to get. The process took 3 months. It was not clean or fast, and there were days I sat in that hotel room eating takeout and wondering if any of it was worth the weight of it. My brother sent 2 more messages in that time. One was an accusation. One was an attempt at reconciliation that read like it had been drafted by his attorney and approved reluctantly. I did not respond to either, not because I was being strategic, because I had nothing left to say to him that would not simply repeat what the 46 pages had already said more precisely than I could. The estate was settled on a Thursday. The house was listed and sold. My share came to me in a wire transfer I watched appear in my account on a Wednesday morning while I was eating a bowl of oatmeal and answering work emails. I sat with it for a moment. Not triumph, not grief, something quieter than either. Like finishing a very long project and closing the last tab. I had moved to a one-bedroom apartment in a different city by then. I signed the lease before the settlement, before I knew exactly how things would resolve, because I had decided I was going to build something that did not depend on someone else's permission to exist. I set up the kitchen myself. I bought a small round table for two and put it by the window and ate my meals there watching the street. I kept the notebook from my grandmother's house, not as evidence anymore, but because her handwriting was in the margins of a few pages, notes she had added when she saw me writing. Little observations. A grocery item I had forgotten. A reminder about a neighbor's birthday. Her handwriting looked like hers, and I liked seeing it. My brother's landscaping company went through a rough quarter that spring. I know because a cousin mentioned it in a conversation I had not expected to be informative. 2 of his accounts pulled their contracts. He had to sell one of his trucks. Whether any of that was connected to the time and money he spent fighting an estate settlement he was never going to win, I cannot say. I did not ask. I was not tracking it. My aunt called me in the summer, cautiously, the way people call when they want to check if the line is still working. She said she had not understood the full situation until it came out in the settlement proceedings. She said she felt bad about the group chat. I said I appreciated that. She asked if I was doing well. I said I genuinely was. She said she was glad. It was a short conversation, and an honest one, and those are rare enough that I remember it clearly. My brother called once, 4 months after the settlement, from his personal number on a Sunday afternoon. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 40 seconds. He said he was not calling about the money. He said he had found a photo of our mother in a box from grandmother's house, a duplicate print, and thought I might want it. He said he could mail it if I wanted. He said he hoped I was doing okay. His voice sounded like someone who had spent a few months revising a story and found out revising did not make it any truer. I texted back a mailing address. He sent the photo. It arrived in a padded envelope with no note. In the photo, our mother is standing in grandmother's backyard, maybe 30 years old, squinting a little into the sun with her arms crossed and a smile she is trying to suppress. She looks like she is in on a joke nobody else has heard yet. I put it on the small table by the window, next to a plant I had kept alive, through the whole ordeal, which felt like its own kind of statement. People ask me sometimes if I regret not fighting harder at the beginning, before the locks were changed, before the post-it note, before the group chat. As if the most useful thing I could have done was make noise earlier. I understand the instinct. I had the same one for a long time. I spent years in that house being quieter than I should have been because every time I tried to take up the space I had earned, someone found a way to make it look like a character flaw. You get trained to operate invisibly. You get so good at it that the people around you forget you are holding the whole structure up until the day you quietly set it down and walk to your car. I do not regret the photo. I do not regret the 46 pages. I do not regret the 3 months of hotel oatmeal, or the new apartment, or the round table by the window. What I regret is the time I spent believing that making myself smaller was the same thing as keeping the peace. It was not keeping the peace. It was just keeping their comfort. There is a difference, and it cost me years to see it. The last message I got from my brother's wife came on a Tuesday evening, just 4 words with no punctuation. I was wrong about you. I read it twice, and set my phone down on the table and looked out the window at the street below where 2 kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk in the last of the daylight. I did not write back. Some things do not need a response. They just need to have been said. Whether they come early enough to matter is a different question entirely. The small round table still sits by the window. The photo of my mother is still on it. Some mornings, I sit there with coffee before work, and the light comes in at the right angle, and the whole room looks temporary and solid at the same time, which is how the best things feel. I built this from what they left me, which was not what they intended but was exactly what I needed. My grandmother's last piece of advice to me, delivered from her recliner on a Thursday afternoon while I was reorganizing her medication trays, was not dramatic. She said, "Sweetheart, people only underestimate the ones they cannot afford to do without." She said it like she was mentioning the weather. I laughed at the time and did not write it down because I thought I would remember it anyway. I remember it anyway.